Hey all, welcome back live in the car after the morning run here. Um, I had a really positive experience with a client recently, so I wanted to share it and talk about fears. So often, therapies, there's limits to it. It's a therapist with a client, building a relationship, talking about an issue, which is really hard, by the way. How could you talk about an issue and then have it not be an issue? It's like the more that you talk about it, the more it's an issue. Like spend an hour talking about being depressed and you're miraculously not depressed. It doesn't work that way. But obviously, the communicating and discussing is there's a building of trust, and then the therapist can share certain pieces of feedback with the client that challenge the views that the person has picked up in their life. But that has limits, and it can be difficult to make movement, to make progress. A lot of times, what a person is facing is like a prison of the mind, their own thoughts and feelings, their own worries, their own fears, and it's in the mind. It's really built up. If you'll notice, think about an issue that you've had for a while that you've had a hard time facing, or you're not facing, or you're not dealing with it, and you talk with friends about it, and you talk to people about it. It doesn't change. It doesn't go away. It doesn't automatically disappear just because you're talking about it. It's not moving at all. It's like I'm deluded into thinking that I'm actually working on an issue. And what happens is it starts to build up and build up over time. Yet it's the same issue, and nothing has changed. But what's going on is more and more time is going by, and I'm not facing that issue, and it's being built up, bigger and bigger in my mind. And the talking, the work on the issue in therapy can be stuck. And if only the person could actually get moving, jump in, try it a little bit, and you'll see this. If you look in your life, you'll think about something that you were struggling with, and now all of a sudden today it's not a struggle anymore. Oftentimes there was like you were pushed in, like a bird is pushed out of the nest and it's got to learn to fly. If we're just thrust into the situation, we so much of the issues that we built up in our mind disappear because they were just in the mind. They never really existed. And no amount of talking or challenging or discussing or conversing or trying is really going to make a difference, because until you actually jump in, and then all of a sudden the situation changes. It's like, here, I'm in this car and I don't know what the situation is down the road. I can build up in my mind all kinds of fears and worries that there's construction or traffic. I have no idea until I actually start driving the car and go take a look and see what's happening and see how the situation changes as I start moving forward. So I had that recently, and I grabbed the opportunity because there are limits. There's your weekly session and talking about an issue, and then you go back to your life and come back a week later, and how did you do? And still stuck. It's one of the things I like about messaging therapy, the text messaging, where a client can write as much as they want. There's regular ongoing contact, but even then, and it's not live contact. It's writing as much as you want, and I sign in once or twice a day, 5 days a week, and respond. There's more regular contact. There's a greater chance to connect, to be involved, to encourage somebody along, but there's still limitations. There's still a person in their mind convinced that this will never happen, and convinced that this is always going to happen, until they actually just literally jump in. So I had it. He was attending some 12-step meetings, and one wasn't working for him, and another one stopped. The meeting just ended. And thankfully we've got all kinds of online tools and ways to get other meetings. I personally have been a fan of Al-Anon's phone meetings. I think it's phonemeetings.org. But anyway, I suggested it, but then I went the next step. I said, let's do it. We'll do it together. I'll jump in with you. I went online and found a bunch of the meetings, showed him a few, had him pick. I said, let's do it. We'll both sign into the meeting at the same time. We'll have a realistic goal. We'll try to sign in at some point during the hour of the phone meeting, and stay online for 5 minutes, and we talk through. And when you sign into these phone meetings, you're on mute. Anyway, the point was that it was very successful. He wound up jumping in the meeting and seeing that it was not nearly as difficult as imagined, and it was very successful. So successful that that meeting wasn't good enough. He wound up finding other ones that he liked even more. But the point was is that a few things, that action, we have to take action and jump in, and that's where when we'll see that things really change, and the stuff that we built up in our mind and we're so convinced is real and intense, it fades, and it makes you think, it makes you wonder, going back, wait a minute, once I jumped in, all these concerns or worries, they disappeared. But I was living with under the limitations of all of that stuff built up in my mind. It's kind of sad, it's tragic, but hopefully, going forward, it could be, wait a minute, what other areas of my life have I thought myself into submission? Am I, self-sticking myself and holding myself back? But when we have these opportunities to kind of jump in and push for it, I like to grab it, I like to do it. And I think therapy has to be dynamic. People say, well, what kind of therapy do you practice? I don't know. I can't label it one thing, because it's not about me. It's not like, welcome to my therapy world and you must use this one technique. It doesn't work that way. I think a therapist has to have a tool belt with lots of powerful, helpful, assistive tools, and depending upon where a client is holding, it has to be used. That was a moment more of kind of coaching, jumping in, and it had a huge impact. And no amount of talking, we had talked and talked, and there was a kind of a wall, an inner wall that had been built up of I can't and this won't work, until it was like, okay, let's jump in and do this together. And then there comes the reflection of, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So what's that feeling about? It was easier than I thought. It wasn't as bad as I thought. Things I thought would happen didn't happen. So what is that all about? That's the stuff of the mind. That's the patterns we picked up as a kid, and we fiercely cling to them, and we never challenge them. And just look how much it interferes with our life, with our living. So I would love to challenge everybody to pick something, and don't pick a super intense fear that's so overwhelming. Pick something you're pushing off, and enjoy that experience of success, of breaking through, of proving to yourself just how strong and capable and powerful that you are. And then after you have that experience of jumping in, and set the bar low, set yourself up to succeed. I love how we make these impossible goals and then get depressed that we failed. It's like no brainer. You were bound to fail. You set yourself up to fail, but have a small goal. Set it up to succeed, like we did. We're going to sign in for 5 minutes and be on mute and not participate in the conversation, but just we're going to sign in, and it was very successful. So try your own thing, your own fear busting, and jump in, and let me know how it goes.